Hey guys, how's it going? Today we're going to be building the new iOS 9 3D Force Touch peek and pop interaction in Pixate. So they just announced this feature in the last Apple event this week, and there's not a whole lot that's known about it, but what I did is I recorded the keynote where they demoed it, and I looked at a bunch of screenshots off their website and got this as close as I can within Pixate's constraints to getting this to work right, and I think it came out pretty well. Now, it should go without saying that since there are no devices with the Force Touch feature yet, we can't actually replicate that exact interaction through Pixate. We have to use the standard taps or presses and double taps. So what we're going to do is the way we're going to make this work is by using two different long presses. So one long press on the email itself that's going to be popping up, and one on the peek view that's going to be popping up. But this will be a good enough substitute to get what we want done. So let's get started. Okay, so I've got all of my assets posted in here. If you haven't downloaded them yet, you can get that off my website. There's a link in the description to it. Just import your assets, and then we're building this on an iPhone 6 canvas size. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a couple of containers to get this set up. Now I should say that since this is kind of a more advanced tutorial, I'm actually going to be using some of the steps that we've learned from creating other prototypes. So if you haven't seen my demo on recreating the iOS frosted glass look, you might want to see that so that you understand what's going on when we put that in, since I won't be explaining it in too much detail. And same with the long press contextual menu tutorial. You should watch that as well. We're going to be touching on a couple of the things that we did in those tutorials to recreate this. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make my inbox container. So just make a new layer, make it the full size of the screen, rename this inbox, and I'm going to make this transparent. There's a few assets that I'm going to bring in. First, I'm going to bring in the nav. I'll come down here, find that. You notice there are no words on this. There's no titles or anything like that. We're actually going to be animating the header to have some animation. So we're going to have this kind of blank tab on here. And then I can bring in my inbox layer right here. This is what's going to be scrolling. And then the bottom bar. Right here, bottom bar. I'll place this at the bottom. Make sure it's at the bottom. Yep, okay. And then we go back into my layers, create a new layer, place this below the nav and above the bottom bar, make it transparent, and this is going to be our scroll container. So I'll rename this to scroll. Let's call it email scroll. Actually, inbox scroll is probably a better name for this. There. Come in here and add a scroll interaction to this. Place our layers. We're going to place the inbox in it. And now we're going to place all of these within the inbox container. I'm going to make sure that the nav and the bottom bar are on top of the scroll. Now before we start adding buttons, we're going to come in here and I'm going to add the background behind our email so that we can get this going. So we're going to come into our layers. It's email background blur right here. Let's place it on top. So it's at 0, 0. And then this is going to go beneath inbox scroll. Bring that on top. So it's the very last thing in the layer. And then I'll add a move animation to it. And this is going to move based off of inbox scroll's scroll position, just continuously with rate. Rate of -1. So now we've got an animated background behind here. And now, before we add our buttons, I'm going to make one more layer. It's going to be the size of this scroll container. I'm going to place the scroll that we just made inside of it. So make it the full width. Above the bar. Transparent. I'm going to call this inbox container. And this is going to be useful with our scaling later. Okay, great. So now we can come in here. Let's get let's get our email message. We're going to place this directly on top of the third email, this one with Austin's name on it. And let's make sure we place it in the right spot at 0 and 303 pixels down. Bring that inside of the container. Place it on top. And we want it to move with our scroll, so we're going to add a move animation to this as well. Just call this move with scroll. Make it move based off the scroll's position continuously with rate at a rate of -1. Now it's moving. So what this is going to do is this is going to be the message that appears as like kind of jumps off the screen and transforms into this peak view. So I'm going to turn its opacity down. We don't want to see it. And this isn't the button we're actually going to be pressing so that it doesn't scroll over our nav. It's going to be hidden and appear once we touch this email down here. So we'll come back into here, create a new layer, make it the size of this email. I'm going to make it transparent and rename this to message button. Make sure it's inside of the scroll, on top of the inbox. And then we'll add a tap interaction to it, or I'm sorry, a long press interaction to this. Then we come back into this email message, add a fade animation to it. Call this fade in. It's going to be based off of message button's long press. Fade to 100% instantly, but we're going to add a 0.2 second delay to this. Now you can't see it, but if I press it, it's popping up. You can see that line below it went away. That's okay. Now we also want to make sure that this pops up to the front above everything because we're going to have a blur in here as well. So let's add a reorder layer. This is going to be based off of message button's long press. We're going to bring it to the front. Also keep that delay of 0.2 seconds. And that means that we can now add our blur scrims in here. This is the blurred cover, fake blur of all of these emails. So we'll come into our assets, drag in blur scrim 1, place this right about here, right on top, and then blur scrim 2 as well, right on top. Turn the opacity down for both of these and bring them into the inbox. We'll just place them on top, just like that. So now we have these blurs covering the scrim. The email message will pop up on top of it. So to get this scrim to turn on, we have to add some fade animations. So we'll come in here, add fade animation, call this fade in. Make it based off of the message button's tap or long press. Fade into 100. I'm going to add a 0.2 second delay on this as well, just like our message has. So now if I press, everything fades out behind it and this message appears up front. Now I'm not going to do blur scrim 2 yet because we're going to have that timing based off of the peak, but we got a couple more things we got to do to this inbox before we can move into that peak view. So when you're pressing down on the screen, what I notice is that the contents behind what's behind the peak starts to scale down a little bit. So we're going to add a scroll or a scale interaction to our inbox scroll, and that's going to be based off of the message press as well. So we'll rename this to scale down, based off message buttons long press. We're only going to scale it down to 0.95, so very close to what it's at. We'll leave this linear duration, or this 0.2 second duration with no delay. And then we'll add a scale up just to get it back, based off the same thing, based off message buttons long press. Have it scale back to 1. We can turn off the duration of this, but let's add a 0.4 second delay just so that we know it'll happen after our peak is up. So you can see it scale and whoop, kind of pop just like that. Great. Okay, so now we're done with this inbox scroll just for a minute. We're going to come back. We're not going to do the nav bar just yet because there's a little bit going on in there, so we'll do that later. but we can forget about this inbox right now, and we can get going with the peak thing that needs to pop up. So we'll come into our layers. In here we have peak message.png. Go ahead and place that in the center. So it's at 9 pixels in and 71 pixels down. Now there's a lot that we have to do with this. We're going to make it scale up. We're going to make it fade. It's going to be draggable. It's going to flick off the screen when you drag it. It's going to fade out and then reset. So this will take us a few minutes, but it's going to be really cool once we're done. So now if we got this placed in here, first thing we want to do, I'm going to scale this down to 0 and fade it out. Then I'm going to add a scale animation to it, a fade animation. I'll rename scale to scale up, and fade to fade in. Scale is based off of menu buttons long press. Have it fade up to scale up to 1. And we're going to have a spring easing curve on this. It kind of bounces a little bit. There's a high friction. Turn the friction to 70. The tension is going to be up to 2000. We're going to have 0.2 second duration, so none of this is going to happen for 0.2 seconds after we make this press. And then I've got to turn on the opacity. So we've got fade in, so we'll make it based off the scroll button's long press, or the message button's long press. Fade into 100. It's going to take 0.1 seconds and maintain that 0.2 second delay. So now there, that pops up just like that. Okay, so now let's make this draggable. Just minimize this, come into our interactions, we're going to add a drag interaction to this. I'm going to set it so that it's only horizontal. Set its minimum position to negative 129. This is far left as it can go. And then a maximum of 148. But I'm going to turn the minimum and maximum up to 9. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I want this to begin to move freely, but as I get closer in, start to have a little bit of pullback. The reason for that is this is going to bounce back and it's going to feel nice and springy, but also there's going to be an icon on here and here that's going to move in with us as we drag, and so we want that to move at a continuous rate, but be able to get to our toss-off point, which is over here, without feeling too constrained. So now that we've got that set, we can go and add another move animation to make this bounce back when we let go of it. So we'll rename this move to move back release. This is going to be based off of peak message scrolls drag, or peak message drag release. Move back to where it goes, 9 and 71. We're going to use a spring animation for this. And the friction that I think looks good, they don't actually show this in the demo, but 30 and 600 should be pretty good. Just kind of bounce back. It's quick, but not too subtle. Okay, so now that we've got that, we need to make these so that they fly off of the screen. Now, what I've done is I've gone and looked through, calculated out where I want this to start, and so I'll give you those coordinates. And what I did is I just kind of figured out what looks good here, what's the same amount over here, and it just divided the screen up into some areas. So we'll add a move animation, 2 move animations. I'll call this move off left, and the second one move off right. And they're both going to be based off of the peak messages drag release. So you just go ahead and set those. Now for move off left, we're going to have to use some conditions, and we're going to use these conditions a few times throughout this. So I'll copy the layer ID, paste it in here, and what I'm going to do is say if I'm moving this off left, I want its right side of the screen, once it gets to about here, to move. So paste the layer ID, peak message PNG, place say dot right is lesser or equal to 105. We'll move its right side off 50 pixels. And we'll leave that duration. So now if I pull over here, it'll bounce back, but if I come over here, it'll move off. Now it's automatically moving back because we told it to do that, so we'll have to make some fade animations to counteract that. But I can minimize that, come off here for move right, paste that layer ID, say .x for the left. Now if it's greater or equal to 270, which is right about here, move its left off to 425. Our canvas is 375 wide, so 425 is adding 50 pixels over. It flies off. Okay. Now we'll add 2 fade animations to do the same thing to make them fade out. And we don't need to build another fade animation because we already have one here. So this is just going to make it reset. I'll call this one fade out left. Call this second one fade out right. Both are based off of peak messages drag release. And we'll just use the same conditions that we did for this. So I can come into move left, copy that, come into fade out left, paste it, tell it to go to 0, and the duration can be instant, but we're going to add a 0.2 second delay since that's how long it takes for it to get off. Minimize these, do the same thing for right. So copy the layer condition, paste it into the fade animation, tell it to go to 0, instantly 0.2 second delay. So now if I let go, it moves off, and it's actually moved back in, but it's minimized, placed down here. So I can pop this up again, just like that. Cool. So now we need to add this red and trash icon that appears when we move to the left and right. So we've got the assets in here. First thing we're going to do is create a container for these. Just make a new layer. Actually, come back into our layers. Make a new layer. This is going to be 61 pixels wide by 84 pixels tall. I'm going to place this 29 pixels in and 303 pixels down, so it's right in the center and it's placed right in here. Then I can make it transparent. I'll rename this to red icon and then come into my layers and grab them. So I got the blue one, I got the white, and I've got red word, just the word. And then I can place these all inside of the container. I want red white to be on top because when you begin the drag it's still white, and then once you get past a certain point they'll start to move and switch colors. Make sure that these are both at 0, 0 within the container, the 2 icons. And then the word, oops, the word is going to be placed 12 pixels in and 72 pixels down. And I'll just put the peak message on top so you can see that it's there. You know, while we're doing this, let's make a new layer so we can see the background. Just leave it named layer 1, pull it just so it's on top of layer 2, just lower the opacity just a little bit. We'll delete this later, but this is so we can see what we're doing. Okay? Now the first thing I want to do is make this icon up here fade. So just add a fade animation, and it's going to make it fade in and out. This is going to be based off of peak messages drag position with duration of final value, and we're going to use some conditions again. So let's just paste that other condition that we just had. We should have the x is greater or equal to 270 copied in our clipboard. Let's paste that one. We're going to change the 270 to 119. Tell it to fade to 0 and make it instant. Now this is something I've measured, so once we get to about here, see it fades out. And that's when the movement is also going to start. So this is another condition we're going to be using. We want to make it fade back in, so let's just paste that same condition. Let's change it from greater to a less than symbol and say 1/18. So now if I drag it here, it'll turn blue, but if I drag back, it'll turn white. We'll say fade to 100 and make it instant. There we go, just like that. Now before we make the move, let's do this again for the delete icon. I'm just going to come up here and duplicate it, and make sure that when you duplicate this red icon, up here you need to grab the new copy. It doesn't automatically select the new copy, so we're going to make sure that that's what we grab. Quickly just rename this to trash icon. And I'm going to go ahead and move this into 285 pixels in. Now I can delete what's inside of here. I just really wanted to move the container. And now I can grab these new icons for the trash. So I got the red one, the white one, and then the word. And same thing, place them inside of this trash icon container. Make sure that both the colored icons are at 0, 0. And the word is going to be placed at 11 and 72. Let's get that there. Now we're going to do the same thing, add a fade animation based off screens or peak messages, drag position. With duration of final value. And we can come back in here. Let's grab this move left. Just copy this. And then paste the condition back in. So it's peak message right, so it's right side. If that is greater than 256, fade to 0 instantly. Add a condition, paste that condition back in. We'll change the less than symbol to a greater and say if it's greater than 255, fade to 100 instantly. So we've got our fade in and out for both of these. Cool. So we're going to use the same conditions to make these move. So we don't want to add the move animation to this icon, we want to add it to the container. So we'll add a move animation to this, rename this move with peak. That's fine. Based off peak messages drag position. Continuously with rate. We're going to limit the drag range and use those same numbers that we just used. So when we're at 256, to 0, reference the right edge, and we'll have this move at a rate of 0.6. I'm going to select the horizontal center as the move target for this. So now once I get here, it should start to move. Oops, need to change that. There we go, 0.6. So now once I pass this point, it starts to move in, just like that. Okay, let's do the same thing with this, with the red icon. Add a move animation, call this move with peak. Based off peak messages, drag position, continuously with rate. Limit that drag range. And the beginning pixel we used for this was 119. We don't have to put an end in here because it'll just go forever. We needed to add one for the 0 because for some reason it doesn't know. The reference edge should be the left, horizontal center, and then 0.6 rate. Same thing. Okay. So now I've got it so they'll move in, but you can see they don't move back. So let's add a move animation to this again. Call this move back bounce. Based off peak messages, drag release. And now we're going to need to reference some of the other conditions that we used before. So this is for the right. So we just copy this, go back into peak messages for move off right, copy the condition, so if it's greater than 270, paste it in here, then move its left back to its position at 29. Let's use a linear using curve with a duration of 0.1, but there's no delay on this. See, now it moves back. Same thing for trash icon. Add a move animation. Call this move back bounce. Based off peak messages drag release. We need to come back in, grab the condition for move off left, copy that, so if its right edge is greater than 105 or less than 105, just paste that, and then change this condition real quick to the number to 106, and then if it's greater, there. Now it moves back. Now I see right is not moving back. Let's see if I did something wrong. Change this, switch this, I want to say 269. That might fix it. There we go. Apologies for that. So for the red icon, we want it to move back if its position is less than 269. So there's another thing that happens when you pull this to the side. This comes in, and when you release, the icons should move into the center of the screen. The other icon should not be there. And then after this is moved to the center of the screen, it kind of fades out, and the black background fades out. So we're going to do that right now. What we're going to do is add a move animation. And with the rate that we've set this to move in, you can see it's pretty centered. But you can't always be sure, so we're going to just make sure that this goes into the center no matter what. Based off peak messages, drag release. And we can paste the conditions we had from before, these bounce animations, this original. We're not going to change this, so if it's less than 105 when we let go, move its left center to 157. It's where it'll be in the center of the screen. We'll use a duration of 0.1. So it slides right in like that. Do the same thing for red icon. Call this move in. Based off of the drag release. The condition that we use for this off right. Just copy this if it's greater than 270. Just paste that. Move its left side to 157 and use a 0.1 second duration. That should be good. Great. So we also need to make sure that the other icon that is showing that shouldn't be is not showing. So we're going to add 2 more fade animations to these to make them go away. I'll add 1 to both, or 2 to both. And I'll call this fade out, release left, and fade out, release right. I'm just using those same conditions that we had used. Set this up. So for fade out left, if I release it after the 105, that's not the right one. Copy this one. So if its right edge is less than 105, fade to 0, we'll make this instant. Same thing for release right. Based off the drag release, I can copy the release right condition, paste it, go to 0, instantly. So now if this happens, if I pull over, it's gone. Now you'll probably be able to actually see it if we pull too far, yeah, but that's okay. Just don't do it. For the red icon, same thing. This is a little bit tedious, but it definitely pays off. Let's call this fade out, release left. Fade out, release right. Both of these are based off of the Peak messages, drag release, so you can set those. So for the left, I'm going to copy that left code condition, paste it in here, go to 0, instantly, done. This one, grab this right side, copy that, paste it in the appropriate thing for right, go to 0, instantly, done. So there's a couple more things that we need to do in order to get this to work. If I pull this over, first I don't want to see the other icon that's over here, and then also I need to make this fade out after it's moved to the center, same with the trash. So the way that we're going to do that is add 2 fade animations to each, the red icon and the trash icon. I'm going to name this fade out left, or drag left, and fade out drag right. And do the same naming for the red icon, fade out drag left, and fade out drag right. Now they're slightly different for each. So if I pull this off to the left, I want the trash can to go away after I cross this left threshold at about here. So what I can do is go into the peak message for move off left, copy that condition, come back in here, I'm going to make sure this says with duration to final value, paste it, tell it to fade to 0. I'm going to add a 0.4 second delay, because that's the delay timer that we're going to use for this move off. So 0.4 seconds. For fade out right, it's based off the drag position. Come up here, go back to the peak, grab the move off right condition, copy it, paste it in here, but I want this to go off instantly, so I'm just going to say 0 and 0. For the red icons, we've got right and left. So we'll set these based off the movements or the peak's drag position continuously to final value. So if I move off left for this one, I want it to be instant. So I'll copy this condition, paste it in here, fade to 0 instantly. For fade out right, we copy this condition. So this is that if it's greater than 270. Paste it, tell it to go to 0, same duration, but the delay of 0.4 seconds, just like the last one. And then to clarify and fix this, for the ones that are moving off where they're doing the slow fade, it's based off drag release, not drag position. So to the trash icon, we want it to be based off the drag release. For drag left, drag right is based off drag position. And then for red icon, drag left is based off drag position, and fade on drag right is based off drag release. It's a little complicated. Now there's just one final thing with these, and I promise we're done. Turn the opacity off. We don't want these to be apparent until we call them. Add 2 more fade animations to these, 1 each. Call it fade in. And let's just make this based off of the drag start for this peak message. We'll make it go turn on instantly, so duration of 0 seconds. Let's do it for both the red icon and the trash icon. So based off peak message, drag start. Okay, that should be good for these. Now the rest of this should go pretty smoothly. So what we can do is now we can go back into our peak message. Let's turn this opacity down. Get back to 0. Let's delete this layer that we put on, and let's make sure this is all working out. Cool. Looks good. Okay. It's pretty good. Okay. So now we need to make this background blur out, but first what we're going to do is make this second background fade in, because that's not the final background. As you know, we put blur 2 in here. And then we'll make these all fade out. So first we'll call this one fade in. It's going to be based off of message button's long press. Fade to 100. We'll leave the duration, but let's add a 2-second delay. So we're going to have the kind of that soft blur come in, and then this harder blur come in, just like we did with the search in my last video. Then we'll come into blur scram 1, add another fade animation. So what this is going to do is actually just fade in and then fade out. Call this one fade out. Based off menu buttons, long press, fade to 0. It can be instant, but let's add a 0.4 second duration for this. Okay. Then we'll come back up into the scrim, blur scrim 2. Add a fade out animation to this. And we're going to use the conditions that we did for some of these icons. So it's going to be based off of peak messages drag release. Come up here, let's grab this move off left condition. Paste it in here, so if its right side is released under 105, it'll go to 0. Duration is the same, and we use that 0.4 second duration for the icons, so we'll use the same one here. Then we're going to click add condition, so we get that else statement. Come in here, grab the condition for the right, go back to the scrim, paste it, tell it to go to 0. 0.2 second duration and a 0.4 second delay. So now if I do this, they fade out. Just like that. So let's do the cool thing. Let's get this email message to appear. When we come up here, on top of the peak message, I'm going to make a new layer, make it the full size of the canvas, transparent, and I'm going to rename this email message. Now in here, we're going to copy the nav. So let's duplicate this. Let's bring it up here and place it inside of email message. Then let's come into our layers. We're going to get the full message bottom bar, drag that in here, we can place it on the bottom. And then we'll add the full message, full email message.png. Let's bring that in here. Just kind of place this roughly. And then full message background blur. And for now, we'll set that off to the side. Okay, so we can place these inside of here, inside of the email message container. Let's also make one more layer. Make sure that's in here. This is going to be for the scroll. So we'll put this at 0 and 65 pixels down. It's going to be the full width, so 375, and 559 pixels tall. We can make it transparent, come in and add a scroll interaction to it, rename this email scroll, make sure it's within the container, and then we'll put the message inside of it. Make sure it's at 0 and 0. So now we have a scrolling email. Okay. We'll put the nav on top. We don't need this to be the email to be too high up. Let's actually put it at the bottom. So we'll bring the bottom bar on top of it, and then we'll place this scroll to work right here. We'll just bring this so it's right on top. So now it's beneath everything. And just like we did with the inbox, we'll add a move animation to this, call this move with scroll. It's based off email scroll's position, continuously with a rate of -1. So now we can see it working behind here. Cool. So the way that this was going to work is we're going to make this scale up with this peak message. We're going to start it scaled down because it kind of pops a little bit when you hold on to this message. It pops just a little. So let's scale this down to 0.98, just really small, and add a scale animation to this. So we'll call this pop, and it's going to be based off of an interaction that we don't have. So we'll come into peak message. Let's just add a long press to this. And now we can set this pop to be based off of peak message's long press. We want it to go to 1, and we're going to use a spring animation for this as well, with a friction of 20 and a tension of 200, and we're going to add a 0.3 second delay to this, because when you press on the peak, it actually kind of scales up just a little, kind of similar to the like thumb in Facebook Messenger, and it's just going to kind of start to swell before it pops. We'll turn the opacity down on this email message container so we can set this up. Come back into peak message, and we'll add one more scale animation to this so that we can set that swell. Call this scale press, based off of its own long press. We'll bring it up to 1.02 just to counteract that 0.2% difference. Try a duration of 0.3. Let's see how that looks. We might change that. Yep, it's pretty good. We'll see how it works with this email pop. So we got the pop set up, and we need to make it fade back in real quick. So we'll add a fade animation. Call this fade in, based off peak message's long press. Fade to 100. We'll add that 0.3 second duration here. Okay, yeah, let's go back into this peak message and set the duration to 0.2. Bring it down again. That should be good. So now when this scales up, we want it to get a decent amount of tension on it so it looks like it's popping, but not too much. Let's see if we do that. It's not quite fast enough. Let's try 400. That's pretty good. It's light, but you can see that it's popping and filling up the screen. So there's just a couple more things that we need to do to finish this up. We need to work the status bar and the header. Now what happens is with the header doesn't actually like move out or change based off of the pop. It's actually still kind of there, but the words on the header move off. So we're going to add those in 2 stages. So for the inbox, we've got our inbox ones, and then for the email, we'll have the email ones that'll pop up. So if we come back into inbox in here, we've got this nav. We're going to add a few of our assets in here and set those up. So we've got the back button, the edit word, the inbox title, and then mailboxes right here. We place these in here. Let's just drag these down, minimize this right here. Drag all of them and place them inside of this nav layer within the inbox. Now the coordinates for these are as follows. For edit, it's going to be 339 pixels in, 37 pixels down. For the back button, 8 pixels in, 33 pixels down. For the inbox title, 164 and 34. And then for the mailbox's title, 25 in is fine, and 37 pixels down. So now I've got that. What's great is, so since we have this whole thing scaling down and moving, now they're in the back, and then they'll be gone. Now let's set up the nav for this second part. Let's duplicate back button, bring it up, and place it inside the nav copy under email. And then what we can also do, let's come back into our layers. Let's grab the arrows, nav arrows, and then the thing that says nav inbox 1. We'll place them inside of this nav copy. Inbox 1 should be at 25 and 37. The back button should be in the same place. And the arrow should be at 309 pixels in and 39 pixels down. Now let's turn off the opacity for these, for arrows, and for inbox, but not the back button, because that doesn't actually go away. And we'll add a fade animation to both of these. So for inbox and arrows. For arrows, we'll call this fade in. This is based off peak messages long press up to 100%, duration of 0.2 seconds, and let's add a delay of 0.2 seconds. Same for inbox. Call this fade in, based off of peak messages long press, fade to 100, 0.2 second duration, 0.2 second delay. And we're also going to add a move animation to this, because this is the position, it actually is going to move in with the pop. And it's going to make that pop look more accentuated, and it's going to look nice. So we'll call this move in, based off peak messages long press. We place this at 25, so we want it to go to 25. Add a 0.2 second duration, 0.2 second delay. And once we got that, hold shift and push the right arrow on your keyboard twice. So now it's at 45 pixels in. And now that's all for that. We don't have to make the others fade out because they're hidden. So as you see, if we pop up, they're gone, and then this pops up, it gets taken over, and they move in. It looks pretty good. We can do the same thing for the bottom bar. Let's add a move animation to this. Call this move in, based off peak messages long press. Now we're going to have this move down. So for its top, let's say move at 624, which is where it currently is right now. Same duration, 0.2 second delay. And just like we did with the other thing in the nav, hold shift, push up on your keyboard twice, so it's at 604. So now that adds a little bit more motion to this. Now we can add our status bar. Come back into our layers, grab our status bar, place it in here, place it in the center. And I have this at 6 pixels in and 4 pixels down. There's a couple fade animations that we need to do to this. Actually 3. So I have 3 fade animations, 1, 2, and 3. And then the first one, we'll just name this fade out. It's the first fade out, that's fine. Based off message buttons long press. Tilt to go to 0. Duration of 0 seconds and a delay of 0.1. Now the reason we're making this fade out is because once there's a blur, it doesn't show up. It doesn't even show up beneath the blur. I think that's because the battery, it's a very dark square and it probably doesn't look that good. I'm assuming that's the decision they made behind that, so it makes it easy for us. It just goes away. We don't have to have a special blur for it either. So we've got that one. Go to the second one. Call this fade in for email pop. Based off peak messages long press. Fade up to 100. 0.1 second duration. And we had that 0.3 second delay on that. So we'll do that. And then we'll name this one peak in, or fade in peak release. Oops. If I could spell. And this is based off of peak messages drag release. We're going to use those same conditions we had before. We'll come back to peak message. Let's open up this move off left. Copy that condition, so if it's less than 105, paste that in there. Goes up to 100. We'll leave a 0.2 second duration. Let's add a 0.4 second delay because that's what we had with the fade. Click Add Condition. We're going to grab the condition for move off right. So if its left side is less or greater than 270, we'll copy that. Paste that here, go to 100, and a 0.4 second delay. So it goes out, pops back in. And then there's another little thing. We need to add the little arrow that comes up over the peak. So we've got it in here. In our layers, it's called peak arrow up. Just drag it in here, place it, and we're going to put it inside of peak message. It's placed at 161 pixels in and 24 pixels outside, so negative 24, it's on top. We can turn its opacity off. Here. It's not visible right now because we have this hidden. We'll add 2 fade animations to this. Fade out and fade in. Fade in is based off of the message button's long press. Go up to 100%. 0.2 second duration is fine. Let's add a delay of 0.5. It actually comes out on pretty quick or kind of slow after this is opened. It looks nice. And then for fade out, based off peak messages drag release. And last time, we're going to use those conditions again. So we still got one on our clipboard, we can paste it. Say it goes down to 0. Instantly, 0.4 second delay. And then for this other one, what was the condition? Let me grab it. For move off left, there we go. Just want to make sure we have both conditions. The left is greater than 270 and the right is less than 105. Go to 0. Make it instant and add that 0.4 second duration or delay. So that pops up and then that appears. It moves with it. When I'm gone, it fades away, and now it fades back in. So that's all for recreating this peek and pop. That was a long one and kind of complicated, so if you made it through to the end, good job. I appreciate it, and I hope that it was helpful for you. Like I said in the beginning, I intentionally didn't explain how to go back, just for the sake of time. It's not too complicated to do that if you want to, and I encourage you to try to figure out how to set the reverse animation so you can just constantly have this working. Right now you'll see I just threw it off. We didn't set it to go back with release, so now it's off to the side. If I pull over, it'll appear because we did set that other back, but you'll have to play around with it if you want to make this complete. But in the interest of time, I just wanted to show you how to get this to work and get this fun little interaction. And this will continue to develop, this interaction, as Pixate grows with the new Apple interaction. They'll, I'm sure, come out with features that'll help make this easier. But for now, we're just kind of hacking through to get this thing to work the way that it's intended. And I think it came out pretty good. So I'll see you next time, and thanks for watching.